The GLA is the starting point for Mercedes SUV ownership, and in this second generation H247 series form is as classy as you'd expect a premium C-segment family hatchback crossover ought to be from the Stuttgart brand. Thorough engineering borrowed from the Mercedes A-Class means that there's plenty to like beyond the badge, primary selling points focusing upon quality and efficiency. The wide range includes everything from shopping versions to a plug-in hybrid, an off-road capable diesel derivative and track-tamed Mercedes AMG variants. Something for almost everyone then, from a car that very much suits its fashion-conscious segment.
Time for a different kind of Mercedes GLA. This second generation version has evolved into a proper SUV rather than a high-riding hatchback, and it's become more sophisticated in almost every way. It's the car its predecessor wanted to be. Whether it's now the kind of model its customers want it to be is what we're here to find out. Like the very first GLA launched in 2014, this one is A-Class based, like the other 7 compact models that Mercedes now makes. That first X156 series GLA design tested the appetite of global buyers for a small Mercedes crossover, and it was rewarded with so many sales, over 1 million, that the Stuttgart maker replaced it in 2020 with 3 models: this Mark II H247 series GLA, the slightly larger and boxier GLB, and the all-electric EQA. In theory, every segment requirement is covered. Except perhaps the requirement for affordability. This GLA is pitched firmly at the premium end of the small SUV market. It takes on similar models from BMW, Audi, Volvo, Lexus and Jaguar. Now that's fine, providing the ownership experience here is properly reflective of the marketing promises. And that wasn't always the case with this model's predecessor. There's certainly no shortage of the kind of advanced technology potential that customers will be looking for, including an advanced PHEV plug-in version, and that's what we're testing here. Across the range, there's everything from modest shopping variants to the segment's fastest high-performance small SUV, all from a car that's more spacious, more efficient, and considerably more futuristic than before. Sounds promising. Let's take a look. The first generation GLA could easily be dismissed as an A-Class hatch with lifestyle ideas above its station, but this Mark II model is very different, and you feel that right from the get-go. If you're a graduate from the older design, then you'll immediately note the more commanding driving position, and then as you drive, it'll become obvious that the Mark I model's famously lumpy low-speed ride has at last been properly addressed. Both these things got fixed as part of a fundamental redesign based on the completely new MFA platform, which undergirds all current compact Mercedes models. But this Mark II GLA uses an updated version of it with increased rigidity and stiffness, and in a further difference over the current A-Class, all conventionally engined models get a properly sophisticated multi-link rear suspension setup, hence the better damping. Much else is new too. All the mainstream engines for a start, which include the clever plug-in GLA 250e petrol variant that we're trying here with its class-leading range. And Mercedes obviously still thinks that there's a place for diesel in the modern zeitgeist, because the more efficient 2-litre OM654 unit we've seen for some time in the company's old models at last makes an appearance in this one, mated in its more powerful form to a new and more sophisticated 4MATIC four-wheel drive system. The common theme with all this technology, though, is that you have to pay handsomely for it. The GLA variants that the majority of customers will actually end up driving won't feature gutsy diesels, PHEV powertrains, or all-wheel drive traction, but basically the same humble 1.3-litre front-driven Renault 4-cylinder petrol engine, which is these days used by all the most affordable compact Mercedes models. Almost always, as in this case, non-negotiably mated to a 7-speed 7G DCT dual-clutch automatic gearbox that's supplied by Getrag. That base petrol unit appears in 2 basic forms here, with 136 horsepower in the base GLA 180 or with 163 horsepower in the GLA 200 model that most customers prefer. The GLA 200 makes 62 from rest in 8.7 seconds on the way to 130 miles an hour. That's 0.9 seconds and 6 miles an hour faster than the feeblest variant. That's provided you select the most focused sport setting from the options provided by the usual Mercedes Dynamic Select driving mode system, the others being comfort, eco and individual. All those alter not only drive throttle response but also steering feel and ESP stability settings. In practice, these entry-level GLAs feel significantly slower than those stats suggest, though. The lesser unit in particular, with just 200 newton meters of torque, sometimes struggles a bit with the task of propelling 1.5 tons of stylized SUV along with any kind of urgency. Having considered that, and perhaps the perspective that a car of this price has no business sharing an engine with a Renault Clio, then you might well want to limit your perusals to a GLA fitted with a 2-litre engine, in which case it'll be paired with an automatic gearbox of Mercedes origin, the 8-speed 8G DCT unit that every other GLA model in the range uses. There's a 224 horsepower petrol power plant fitted to the GLA 250, which has a nice turn of speed. It makes 62 in 6.9 seconds on the way to 149 miles an hour. There's probably more of a market, though, for the base diesel, the GLA 200D, which offers 150 horsepower and 320 newton meters of torque for decent real-world performance, which sees 62 click by in 8.6 seconds en route to 129 miles an hour. The faster version of that 2-litre diesel, the 190 horsepower unit fitted to the GLA 220D, is favoured with the much improved 4MATIC four-wheel drive system we mentioned earlier. The multi-plate clutch setup now of the electromechanical rather than the hydraulic sort. That's important because it facilitates variable levels of torque split depending on the drive mode that you select. So the car is front biased in the usual comfort and eco modes, with 80% of drive being pushed to the front, and rear biased in sport, with 70% being pushed to the rear. Drive technology of a quite different sort features on the GLA variant that we've chosen here, the 250E. This plug-in petrol hybrid model uses the PHEV powertrain, which is also fitted in Mercedes A, B and CLA ranges. With this, the 163 horsepower version of the volume 1.3 litre petrol unit is here paired with the 8-speed Mercedes auto transmission, and it's mated to a 75 kilowatt electric motor powered by a 15.6 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery. That's enough to produce a very healthy 218 horsepower system output with a gutsy 450 newton meters of torque, and that's enough to dispatch 62 in 7.1 seconds on the way to 136 miles an hour if you don't care about prolonging your potential driving range, and that's WLTP rated at a very class competitive 37 miles. This is progress that you can monitor via a neat selectable energy flow screen that's available from the Center Dash Monitor's EQ menu, which shows you in real time what's being driven by what. This car has a pleasing preference for battery-powered motoring, and there's an extra electric dynamic select drive mode for use if, once you get going, you want to prevent the combustion engine cutting in. In theory, you can stay in battery drive all the way up to 87 miles an hour. Alternatively, an electric in city option allows you to save battery charge for urban driving that you might want to do later on in your trip. Either way, you can maximize battery range with careful use of the steering wheel paddle shifters there when you're in electric mode, not to switch ratios but to vary levels of brake energy recuperation. Although it's easier just to pull hard on either one, this then selects a radar-based D-Auto recuperation program, and that basically does it all for you. A couple of minor dynamic differences separate the 250E model's drive experience from the more conventional GLAs. One isn't much of an issue: the 8G DCT auto gearbox's greater preference to continually shift up to longer ratios in pursuit of better economy. The other might be, though, a noticeable degeneration in ride quality, which you feel over really poor surfaces and speed humps. That's brought on by an extra 150 kilos of battery weight and by the engineering necessity of switching this plug-in model to a less sophisticated torsion beam rear suspension setup. Otherwise, the driving experience here isn't very much different to that of any other mainstream GLA, which means that, as we said at the beginning, on mainstream versions of this car, ride quality is vastly better than was served up by the first generation model. Just as well as for our market, Mercedes continues to refuse to offer adaptive damping as an option. Yes, the car can still struggle over particularly bad surfaces, but once you speed up, you'll find it deals with camber changes and undulations with the surety of a far more expensive SUV. As with any small crossover of this kind, there's no particular sense of engagement to be had in pushing on through the turns, but if you do, you'll note the first-rate body control, and that's aided by the stiffer platform and the wider tracks, and the light but pleasingly accurate steering. BMW X1 is probably a bit more dynamic, and an Audi Q3 is probably a bit more comfort-orientated, but in neither case would the difference be likely to sway you against GLA ownership if you found yourself attracted by the frisson of quality here and by the lure of the three-pointed star, of course. Now, we normally finish driving reviews of small SUVs with a brief reference to the fact that typical entrants in this class aren't really engineered for any sort of life beyond a paved surface. This model's predecessor certainly wasn't. This, though, is supposed to be the entry rung on a ladder of reasonably capable Mercedes SUVs. The G in the GLA name stands for the German Gelände, which means terrain. So, emboldened by the opportunity to develop that new 4MATIC system, the development team decided to give the single mainstream diesel variant equipped with that four-wheel drive setup a bit of extra soft roading capability, and that's courtesy of the inclusion of a standard off-road engineering package. In the extremely unlikely event that you're the kind of GLA customer who likes the idea of taking on gnarly tracks and ploughed fields in this car, it'd be wise not to get your hopes up too far here. This package does little to improve this car's restricted wheel articulation and very limited ground clearance. The latter's raised by just 9mm with the 4MATIC system, but you do get an additional off-road dynamic select driving mode, which adjusts the power delivery and the ABS control in a way which will help in light forest tracks. Plus, in the off-road setting, the all-wheel drive clutch acts as an interaxle differential lock with the basic torque distribution front to rear balanced at 50-50. There's also a downhill speed regulation feature, basically hill descent control to ease you down slippery slopes. Plus there's some extra all-wheel drive screen graphics, and you get a clever off-road light built into the multi-beam LED headlamps, which in off-road mode remains permanently switched on at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour. It offers a wider, brighter light distribution in front of the vehicle and allows you to more easily see obstacles in rough terrain in the dark. You would still be unwise to venture anywhere that might put those figures severely to the test, but this package might just enable a GLA to clamber up a slippery track to, say, a weekend Lake District holiday home, the sort of thing that might represent the summit of a typical owner's off-road ambitions. We'll finish by briefly covering a couple of 4MATIC GLA models aimed at Silverstone rather than Snowdon, the two Mercedes-AMG high-performance variants. The most accessible of the pair is a GLA 35 4MATIC, which, as you'd expect, uses the brand's A35 hot hatch model's potent drivetrain, a 2-litre petrol turbo, 306 horsepower power plant, mated to a specific AMG Performance 4MATIC drive setup, and a rifle crack 8-speed AMG Speed Shift DCT paddle shift auto gearbox. If you're quick with those shifters, 62 can be crested in just 5.2 seconds from rest, and top speed has to be restrained at 155 miles an hour, all to the accompaniment of an artificially induced but rather animated crackling engine soundtrack. There are extra slippery and Sport Plus dynamic select drive mode settings, and the system's different modes are linked to the AMG Dynamics Agility Control, which adds a further layer of drive adaptability, altering torque distribution, steering characteristics, and stability system intervention to suit different conditions. If you prefer your hot GLA's drive experience to be of the Vindaloo rather than the Madras variety, then you'll be directed instead to the segment's very fastest small SUV, the GLA 45S 4MATIC Plus. Here, the Stuttgart brand's Falterback tuning division has massaged that 2-litre power plant out to a hefty 421 horsepower, which is 40 HP more than the equivalent version of the previous generation model. And that makes this the most powerful series production 4-cylinder turbo engine in the world. This unit develops 500 Newton meters of torque from just 2,250 RPM, up from 475 Newton meters before, and that's significantly better than can be managed by this variant's closest rival, the Audi RS Q3. Use the incorporated race start function, and 62 from rest takes just 4.3 seconds. That's en route to 168 miles an hour. Traction through the bends is enhanced by AMG Performance 4MATIC Plus all-wheel drive and AMG torque control. Plus there's bespoke AMG suspension with adaptive damping based around the 3 modes of AMG ride control. There's also a high-performance braking system, and track fiends can play with the AMG Track Pace app. Those two Mercedes AMG models offer an interesting confection, but we can't help feeling that it's a bit at odds with the essential character of this car, just as the off-road engineering package is. This car is about suburbia and the school run, and that's territory it now addresses with a level of sophistication that you might almost feel makes the premium asking price justifiable. Every third Mercedes sold these days is now an SUV, every fourth a compact car, and at last, in driving the GLA in this second generation form, you can see why. If you want to know the difference between a crossover, basically a high-riding hatchback, and a proper purpose-designed SUV, then compare the first generation GLA design, very definitely a crossover, with this Mark II model. This segment has now become so significant that half-hearted design just doesn't cut it anymore. So, like its premium rivals, this Mercedes is now every inch a proper compact SUV. As part of that transition, there have been some interesting dimensional changes. This car is actually now 40 millimeters shorter than before, but there's 30 mils more wheelbase length between the front and rear axles, so that really doesn't matter. And it's a considerable 104 millimeters taller. What will matter just as much to likely owners, though, is the fact that it's a considerably more complete and modern piece of design. The powerful shoulders of the bodywork blend with the coupe-like lines of the tapering side windows and a contoured panel profile. Roof rails and all-round protective cladding over the wheel arches and the lower sills emphasise the SUV vibe. And of course, to suit the current trend, you can have large wheels. Rim sizes range from 18 to 21 inches. We've got the 19-inch AMG 5 twin-spoke alloys here. At the front, where stylised power domes in the bonnet emphasise the self-assured demeanour, it's evident that this GLA is quite a bit wider than its predecessor, 30 millimetres wider in fact. Something emphasised by this prominent grille, which features single louvre strips flowing into the central star, and it'll have a background of twinkling silver pins, providing you avoid the base sport spec models. The huge dog bone shaped lower section with its wide outer intakes looks like something borrowed from a much larger car, but the Stormtrooper style LED high performance headlamps are smart with their incorporated daytime running light strips. Move to the rear and you'll find LED light clusters presented in two parts, with the reflectors positioned separately in the bumper. There's also a subtle roof spoiler and quite an intricately fashioned lower bumper diffuser section incorporating oval tailpipes on either side. Of course, as usual, what's more important is the stuff you can't see. In this case, the sophisticated MFA2 compact car platform, which this GLA shares with all Mercedes' other current front-driven compact models. It's primarily because of this chassis that this car manages to be significantly lighter than many of its segment rivals. To take the most extreme example, a base diesel GLA is a full 225 kilos lighter than the equivalent Jaguar E-Pace class counterpart. Yet the GLA structure is particularly stiff and strong. High strength, ultra high strength and hot formed steel panels account for about 72% of the body shell. Okay, time to check out the part of this car which Mercedes promises will really sell it to you, the interior. Now that taller roofline allows for a notably raised hip point, which for older owners will make getting in easier than it would be in an A-Class. Customers of the original GLA who followed recent advances in cabin design for Mercedes' various compact models will be expecting a radically different interior this time around, and that's exactly what you get. The usual glitzy screen fest, which is high on style but in some areas of quality a bit lacking in substance. Now we're going to get to that after remarking on what is perhaps just as important, that this Mark II model's status as a proper SUV rather than a conventional hatchback is confirmed by the way that it sits you so much more commandingly than its predecessor did. Your viewpoint here is 97mm higher than before and 140mm higher than it would be in an A-Class. Although if you don't happen to like that, a wide-ranging height adjuster allows you to reposition the seat so that your windscreen perspective is a bit more conventional. Despite all of that, there's 14mm more headroom too. Haven't got used to that. Look around, there's plenty to take in. Take, for example, the tubular profile of the silver door grab handles that run horizontally across the door centre panels like railings and flow seamlessly into the armrests. And 5 round air vents. The centre 3 are particularly prominent. They're all fashioned in a turbine design with filigree guide vanes that can be configured by the ambient lighting system to glow like jet afterburners at night. It's all very smart, but as in any other current compact Mercedes, the main passenger talking point will revolve around the array of touchscreens which look like something from an electrical store shop window. This is the mid-range layout, which sees a 10.25-inch centre dash infotainment display paired with a 7-inch instrument binnacle screen. With base spec, both monitors will be 7 inches in size, while at the top of the range, with the widescreen version of this layout, each would use the larger 10.25-inch format. There are plenty of ways to interact with this advanced MBUX or Mercedes-Benz user experience setup. Touchscreen, voice control and various touch pads. Don't worry, we're going to talk you through all that. Let's start with this centre stack display. That's your portal for interacting with all of the infotainment system's expected features: phone, navigation, radio, media and so on. There are sections for Wi-Fi connectivity and apps which allow you to access everything from a web browser to info on weather, restaurants and hotels. And if you scroll down further, then you'll access some of these screens' various so-called themes: trip, efficiency, lounge, or you can configure your own, which combine preset layout and colour styles so you can quickly change the cabin ambience to suit your mood. Plus you can also scroll through a wide selection of informational screens which feature wondrous graphics. Overall, there's a great deal to support the brand's claim that this MBUX package takes in-car connectivity to a new level. It is, though, a boast that's slightly undermined by the setup's failure to include standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring across the range. The smartphone integration package that you need for that is absent on 2 of the most popular trim levels, base sport and mid-range AMG line. What you do get, though, across the range is a superb standard 3D navigation system, which on the plushest variants is embellished with what Mercedes calls augmented reality technology. This is effectively a live camera feed of the road ahead, which is overlaid with house numbers, road names, direction arrows and other useful bits of information which will all help you to find your way. We've just touched on the different ways of interacting with all these different infotainment features. The easiest of these is the integrated Hey Mercedes voice-activated functionality. Now, the brand name designates the greeting that you'll need to address to the screen to get its incorporated MBUX speech recognition setup working. Now, it only responds to the first voice it hears on any given journey, by the way, so children crowing "Hey Mercedes" from the back there won't be able to annoy you by constantly altering your chosen screen functions. As we've remarked when we were testing some of the company's other more recent models, the voice control aspect of MBUX remains, in our view, something of a work in progress, but in our estimation, it's a setup that's currently rivaled only by BMW for intuitive responsiveness. Conventional voice control technology usually requires certain specific voice commands from users, but this system's linguatronic natural speech recognition is pretty good at understanding almost anything that you ask of it. It is particularly good at things like finding you radio stations or telling you what the weather is at a program destination. If you can't be bothered with voice control and you don't want to stab away at a touchscreen, then you'll need to get very familiar with the various manual touchpads which offer a further way to activate the infotainment system. The main one being down here at the base of the centre stack. It offers the kind of useful functionality that you would have to do without in a rival Audi Q3 or Range Rover Evoque. Usually we don't especially like touchpad controllers. On the move, they're difficult to accurately use on anything but smooth surfaces, but this particular one is the best of its kind with easy functionality that's helped by these surrounding shortcut buttons for key vehicle features. Note to Lexus here, if you want to give customers touchpad controllers, this is how you do it. Two more touchpads also feature, both much smaller and both here on the 3-spoke multifunction steering wheel. The first on the left-hand spoke, offering yet another way of fiddling with the features on the central screen. The little touchpad on the right-hand steering wheel spoke, well, that is for customizing what you see in the digital instrument display in the binnacle ahead of you. Flick on that right-hand touchpad and you'll bring up a horizontal menu for tailoring this instrument binnacle monitor's central section. That'll give you selectable drive assistance, telephone, navigation, trip, radio, media, drive dynamics and setup features. There's lots here. Amongst other things, there's a trip section that has a proactive eco display. The driving dynamics area has a G-forces meter, and assistance monitors your attention level and the distance to the vehicle in front. You can tailor the colour and style layout of both the centre stack touchscreen media display and this digital instrument display via 3 available style and display options: blue themed classic, yellow themed sport and orange themed progressive. Enough on connectivity. What else do you need to know about this cabin? Well, as ever in a Mercedes, you're surrounded by premium touches which are common to every GLA variant. A glossy piano black coated centre console which flows up into the dash, a Napa leather trimmed sports steering wheel, comfort spec seats that are heated and stitched with easy to clean Artico man-made leather, a dual-like overhead lighting panel, proper quality feeling gear shift paddles, velour floor mats and the intricately fashioned door cards that we mentioned earlier on, which also feature Alcantara style Dinamica panels and smart double stitching. Luxury downsizers will love all of this. There are, though, areas where this GLA's premium pretensions do slip a little. The air vents, for example, don't feel as great to the touch as they look to the eye. And although build quality from the German Rastatt plant seems strong, signs of cost saving can be found when you run your fingers around the edging for the door bins or along the footwell panels of the lower centre console. The freestanding centre screens and the overhead lighting panel all flex when you prod them. And if you happen to have forked out well over £40,000 for an upper spec version of this car, then the rather flimsy column-mounted transmission stalk that it shares with the Mercedes Sprinter van might not be quite the kind of thing that you'd have been expecting. What else? Well, getting comfortable on these supportive seats is easy, thanks to plenty of seat and wheel adjustment. It is a pity, though, that you don't get lumbar adjustment as standard. That is only included as part of the electric seat package that you only get right at the top of the range. What you don't have to pay extra for, though, is a rear parking camera. That's just as well, actually, because over-the-shoulder vision, it is somewhat compromised by blind spots in each rear pillar. That makes the absence of rear parking sensors on the base variant an annoying omission. Another slight irritation is the fact that Mercedes hasn't followed the lead of some rivals in providing both USB-A and USB-C ports. They're all here of the smaller USB-C variety, which for certain devices might mean that you have to have unsightly converter leads in the areas where the twin ports are provided. There are two, this lovely butterfly lidded box between the seats and this compartment at the bottom of the centre stack, which has a lovely slatted top which slides back to reveal twin cup holders, and on the plusher variants a wireless charging mat too. You also get ticket clips in the sun visors, a reasonably sized glove box with an upper ledge, door pockets with recesses for 500ml bottles, and a lower storage area between the base of the front passenger seat and the door. The brand promises a netted storage pocket in the passenger footwell for GLA customers, but that hasn't been fitted here. This overhead lighting panel lacks the sunglasses compartment that you would get in the GLB, but it does incorporate buttons for the emergency assistance and SOS call features. Time to take a seat in the rear. Now, a lot of thought's gone into this design and the way that families will use it. Take, for example, the way that these doors overlap the sills. This keeps the door openings and therefore the trouser legs of boarding passengers from getting dirty. Now, we mentioned earlier on that although this second generation GLA is shorter than its predecessor, these short front and rear overhangs and a longer wheelbase means that it claims to be bigger inside. Well, this is where we'll put those claims to the test. Sure enough, you'll notice a big difference if you happen to be familiar with the old car. In one single design leap, this H247 series design has taken the GLA from near bottom to near top of its class in terms of space on offer. That's thanks to 116mm of extra legroom. Someone well over 6 foot tall could sit behind a similarly sized front passenger and still have leg space. Plus, there's plenty of room to slide your feet below the base of the chair in front. Annoyingly though, the sliding and reclining rear bench, which is available on this car in other markets, is not being offered here. You would think that headroom would be better too, given this second generation model's substantial extra exterior roof height, but curiously, interior ceiling space has actually fallen this time around by 6mm, which might be significant if you exacerbate that deficit by getting a model fitted with a panoramic glass roof. Overall, though, this is a big improvement. You could even now properly fit a third person in the middle of the seat here for very short trips, thanks to 43mm more shoulder room and 45mm more space for your elbows. It helps here that the bench hasn't been specifically contoured for two, as is the case with some rivals. As at the front, it does feel properly premium back here, particularly on a plusher variant like this one with its Dynamica trimmed red stitched door cards. Practicalities include seat back nets, reasonably sized door pockets with bottle holders and coat hooks next to reading lights in the overhead grab handles. Over the highish transmission tunnel here, there is a further USB-C port with an open storage area just above, and that's just below two silver-rimmed circular vents. There's no central armrest though, but the middle part of this bench can be folded down. Finally, let's take a look in the boot, and that's accessed via a standard EasyPack powered tailgate that on this plusher variant can be activated with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper if you happen to be approaching your GLA laden down with child seats and paraphernalia. Once the hatch powers up, you'll find 435 litres of space. That's actually 46 litres less than was offered by the previous generation model and 70 litres less than the equivalent BMW X1. To give you a bit more class perspective, a Volvo XC40 has a boot 17 litres bigger, but an Audi Q3 offers 25 litres less trunk space, and in a Lexus UX, there's 55 litres less. We've got the GLA 250e PHEV variant here, which, due to underfloor battery placement, has even less room, 385 litres. Even here, though, something like a folded baby buggy should easily fit. You access the cargo area across this in practically silver-trimmed bumper lip, which will probably get scratched unless you're very careful. Once you get your stuff in, there's not much space beneath the cargo base, certainly not on this PHEV model, which can't even offer enough underfloor room to store the charging leads. There's certainly no chance of having a useful fold-out crate that was provided on the old GLA, or being able to specify any kind of spare wheel. Not an ideal state of affairs for any car purporting to be an SUV. On the plus side, you get a couple of netted side areas, two bag hooks, an elasticated side strap on the right, 4 silver tie-down points, and this left-hand 12-volt socket. Plus, the warning triangle has been very neatly embedded into the leading edge of the floor. Need more room? Well, Mercedes has at last copied its primary rivals and added in a more flexible 40-20-40 split for the rear seat back, which means the centre part can be pushed forward for longer items like skis without disturbing a couple of rear-seated passengers. Pushing down the rear bench entirely opens up 1,060 litres of space up to window level, or up to 1,430 litres if you load to the roof. With this PHEV, the respective figures are 1,010 and 1,385 litres. Either way, it's a bit less than you get with some competitors, but it's probably as much as most owners will need. So just how much are you prepared to pay for a really premium experience from your compact SUV? Well, GLA pricing is certainly going to put that to the test. Now, from launch, this Mark II model was priced from around £32,000, but the GLA variant that you're likely to want is almost certainly going to be in the £35,000 to £40,000 bracket, and possibly more. If it's a GLA 250e plug-in variant like this one, then it'll be £40,000 upwards. And if you want one of the Mercedes AMG GLA 35 or GLA 45 S4matic high-performance versions, well, you'll have to think more like £45,000 to £65,000. Now, in the conventional range, there are 6 trim levels. There's Sport, there's Sport Executive, and there are 4 different flavours of AMG line. There's Standard Executive, there's Premium, and there's Premium Plus. All GLA models have to be had with auto transmission, and it's a 7G DCT 7-speeder with the base 1.3 litre petrol engine. Try to find the extra £1,500 necessary to upgrade from the base 136 horsepower GLA 180 to that unit with the perkier 163 horsepower GLA 200 variant. The next stage up in mainstream GLA ownership is to go for one of the 2-litre engines, all of which are paired to an 8G DCT 8-speed auto. The 2 base sport models include the option of the GLA 200D variant, which gets the brand's now familiar OM654 diesel in a 150 horsepower state of tune. Start your search from mid-range AMG line trim though, as most GLA customers do, and your choice of 2-litre options widens to also include the GLA 220D 4matic, which uses the same diesel engine uprated to 190 horsepower and mated to 4-wheel drive. Or you can have the front-driven petrol-powered GLA 250, which offers 224 horsepower and is really rather quick. Before we get into competitor comparisons, let's position this car for you in Mercedes' own range. Now, the brand's other compact SUV, the GLB, which is slightly larger and which can be had with up to 7 seats, is about £1,500 more with a similar engine and spec. You might also consider a Mercedes CLA shooting brake estate as a possible alternative, which in the closest comparable form costs nearly the same as a GLA. If in looking for a compact Mercedes, you are not especially wedded to the idea of an SUV, but you still want something quite trendy and versatile, then check that car out as a possible alternative. We should also mention the EQA, which is the full electric version of this car, but with styling revisions inside and out to reflect the look and feel of the BEV Mercedes EQ brand. Now, the EQA isn't our focus here, but as a point of reference, let's tell you that it sells in the £45,000 to £56,000 bracket, and the range is built around 3 models, all using the same 66.5 kilowatt-hour battery. There's the front-driven EQA 250 with 188 horsepower and 2 4matic 4-wheel drive variants, the 228 HP EQA 300 and the 292 HP EQA 350. All those deliver around 265 miles of WLTP rated driving range. Okay, on to competitors from other brands. Now, if you use the 1.3 litre petrol engine that most GLA customers choose as our point of comparison, then you'll find that the 3 most directly comparable competing models, that is automatic versions of Audi's Q3 35 TFSI, BMW's X1 S-Drive 18i and Volvo's XC40 T3, all cost around about the same as a base GLA 180. Mind you, the difference might widen a bit if you equipped the base version of this Merc to the standards of those 3 rivals. There is a bit more of a difference if you're looking at a diesel compared to the GLA 200D. Automatic versions of the Audi Q3 35 TDI and the BMW X1 S-Drive 18D will save you almost £2,000. To be fair to Mercedes though, we should also point out that the cheapest diesel-powered automatic versions of the Range Rover Evoque and the Jaguar E-Pace, the D165 MHEV variants, well, they would cost you around £1,700 to £2,000 more than a base diesel GLA. If you happen to be looking at either an Evoque or an E-Pace as an alternative here, then you won't be able to make direct comparisons with the most affordable volume 1.3 litre petrol GLA models, because neither the Range Rover or the Jaguar can be had in petrol form with either two-wheel drive or with engines smaller than 2 litres in size. The other model that might come to mind in the premium part of this segment is the Lexus UX, but that car in its mainstream UX 250h form comes only with a full hybrid self-charging petrol engine, and that creates a rather different kind of confection. Still, that electrified powertrain does develop a useful 184 horsepower, and the UX is well priced from around £30,000, which makes it a good alternative if you're looking at a GLA diesel, provided you can put up with the fact that the Lexus has less rear seat space and boot space than this Mercedes. That's really it for direct premium badged rivals in the small SUV segment. Of course, if badge equity isn't particularly important to you, then your choices in the small category widen considerably. GLA money will get you near premium contenders in this class, like the Mini Countryman, the Volkswagen Tiguan and the Cupra Formentor, all of those being cars that we rate quite highly. And of course, there are plenty of other volume brand options, most of which will give you a bit more space inside. So we're thinking here of cars like Ford's Kuga, the Mazda CX-5, the Citroën C5 Aircross, the Hyundai Tucson, the Vauxhall Grandland, the Skoda Karoq, the Nissan Qashqai and the Peugeot 3008. If you were looking at a diesel GLA, you might want to consider the Honda CR-V and the Toyota RAV4 as alternatives too, both of which only come with a frugal self-charging hybrid petrol unit. As we mentioned earlier on, for this test we've chosen to try the GLA 250e plug-in hybrid, and that's a variant which does of course have its own group of select PHEV small SUV rivals. The most direct one is Volvo's front-driven XC40 T4 Recharge plug-in hybrid model, and that'll save you around £2,500 over this plug-in Mercedes. The BMW X1 X-Drive 25e will also save you money, around £1,000, and that has the added advantage of all-wheel drive. You will need to pay quite a lot more though if you want the premium compact SUV sector's two other PHEV offerings, the Audi Q3 45 TFSIe and the Jaguar E-Pace P300e, but that's because those two cars offer quite a lot more power than this GLA 250e. But they would certainly come into play as rivals if you were looking at the plusher versions of this Mercedes plug-in model. And finally, a quick word on the Mercedes-AMG engineered GLA variants. The 306 horsepower GLA 35 4MATIC models' primary rivals are P300 versions of the Range Rover Evoque and the Jaguar E-Pace, which it handsomely undercuts with base trim. If, though, you selected a GLA 35 4MATIC with the kind of trim level that you'd need to match those two JLR performance models, then the price difference would be much narrower. At the very top of the range, the Mercedes-AMG GLA 45S 4MATIC Plus flagship variant, that has only one key rival, the Audi RS Q3. That costs around £8,000 less, but it also offers 31 horsepower less. So a potential customer would really have to decide how significant that power deficit really was. If, having considered all the various alternatives, you conclude that there's nothing quite like a GLA, then you're going to need to know just how generous Mercedes has been with the standard spec. So let's take a look at that now. Now, as mentioned earlier on, the starting point in the range lies with sports specification, but that comes with a reasonable amount. There's 18-inch 5 twin-spoke alloy wheels, LED high-performance headlamps, there's polished aluminium roof rails and an EasyPack powered tailgate. You get a 180-degree reversing camera too, but rear parking sensors are missing, and that's a significant omission. Inside, sport trim has just enough to make you feel special. The upholstery is trimmed in black Artico man-made leather, matched to spiral look fabric. Plus you get comfort spec seats that are heated at the front. There's also thermotronic automatic climate control and a multifunction leather-stitched sports steering wheel with gear shift paddles, along with velour floor mats, an alarm and cruise control with a speed limiter. And now, as usual with Mercedes, there is also the dynamic select driving mode system. Now that allows you to adjust the throttle response, the steering feel and the gear shift timings to suit the way that you want to drive. Perhaps our favourite standard cabin touch, though, is the car wash function. A single tap to activate and the exterior mirrors fold in, side windows close, the windscreen wipers remain switched off and the climate control switches to air recirculation mode. Very neat. The real GLA cabin talking point, though, is the clever MBUX, Mercedes-Benz User Experience Multimedia Infotainment System. And this is controlled by two high-resolution screens. Now, with the base sport trim, you get a 7-inch one in the instrument cluster and a further 7-inch touchscreen media display in the centre of the dash. The MBUX system is built around the brand's Hey Mercedes voice activation system, and that's something you'll quickly find yourself using to operate many of the interior features. These include a 100-watt DAB audio setup, Bluetooth and a live traffic information feature, which is free for the first 3 years of ownership. There's hard disk navigation too, of course, plus 3 years use of the Mercedes Navigation Services setup. Now that allows the car to answer questions about your journey, so things like fuel prices along your route, available parking spaces at your destination or the current weather. What you don't get, at least at this level in the range, is the smartphone integration package. Now that will give you Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone integration, which in this day and age isn't really acceptable on a car of this price. Now we were a bit shocked also to find that parking sensors are missing with Sport Spec 2. So overall then, quite a lot's included with Sport Spec, and if you need a bit more but you still have to keep to budget, Mercedes also offers a Sport Executive variant for only £1,500 more, which adds in the missing smartphone integration package and also the parking package, and that'll give you all-round parking sensors. There's also a larger 10.25-inch touchscreen media display in the centre of the dash, power folding mirrors, a wireless charging mat and an auto-dimming rear-view mirror. Most GLA customers, though, are probably going to want to find the extra to move up at least as far as mid-range AMG line spec. At this level, your car gets a much sharper look, mainly thanks to a package of AMG-specific touches, various extra chrome elements, plus bespoke front air intakes and rear air outtakes, along with a high-gloss chrome front splitter and chrome dual-flow exhaust pipes, also from the AMG catalogue. And there's this diamond-style single louvre radiator grille embellished by chrome pins. You also get these 5 twin-spoke 19-inch tantalite grey alloy wheels, along with heat-insulating privacy glass. Inside you get a more dynamic cabin feel thanks to extra touches like brushed stainless steel sports pedals, a Napa leather-stitched flat-bottomed multifunction steering wheel. There is also part Dinamica red-stitched microfiber trim for the Artico leather upholstered sports seats. There's carbon structure cabin inlays, there's galvanised gear shift paddles and AMG floor mats. As with base Sport Spec, though, there are a few key GLA items missing from AMG line trim. Again, there's an executive trim level waiting to add those things in for £1,500 more. To reiterate, an AMG line executive GLA model comes with the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone integration package, also the parking package, which of course gives you all-round parking sensors, the larger 10.25-inch touchscreen media display in the centre of the dash, power folding mirrors, a wireless charging mat and an auto-dimming rear-view mirror. The next level up in the trim hierarchy, AMG Line Premium, is the one that gives you Mercedes' full-effect widescreen cockpit design, and that sees both the dash screens, the one for the instrument cluster and the one for the centre of the dash, upgraded to 10.25 inches in size and seamlessly joined together. The infotainment screen gains extra features too, an uprated 255-watt 10-speaker advanced sound system, Plus, the 3D sat-nav system gains a feature we really like, something which Mercedes calls augmented reality navigation. Now, this is effectively a live camera feed of the road ahead, which is overlaid with house numbers, road names, direction arrows, and other useful bits of journeying information which will help you find your way. At AMG line premium level, you'll also get keyless entry, illuminated front door sill scuff plates, a 64 colour ambient lighting system, and pre-installation for a trailer coupling. At the top of the range is AMG line Premium Plus trim, which gets you the brand's more sophisticated multi-beam LED headlamps, and they have 18 individually controllable high-performance LEDs per multi-beam LED module to implement a split main beam with 16 controllable individual segments. Now, this tech allows these headlamps to constantly adapt themselves specifically to road conditions and to other motorists. Cornering lights, they're activated when you're turning. There's a special roundabout lighting function, and there's also a special city light for built-up areas with street lamps. Other Premium Plus inclusions run to the panoramic glass roof that we'd really want, given this car's rather dark interior, and there's a powered front seat feature with memory settings and lumbar support. Those then are the 6 trim levels applicable to the mainstream combustion versions. Now, we did mention earlier on that we were testing the GLA 250e PHEV model. That's an electrified variant which has a bespoke series of so-called exclusive trim level designations, and they all correspond almost directly to the 3 better specified AMG line derivatives that we've just covered there. This GLA 250e has exclusive edition trim. Basically, it's the same as AMG line executive, or you can have this PHEV crossover in the exclusive edition premium trim. That's the same as AMG line premium, or in top exclusive edition premium plus trim, and that is the same as AMG line premium plus spec. Got that? Good. Let's finish our perusal of spec by briefing you on the 2 high-performance Mercedes-AMG GLA variants, and start with the standard GLA 35 4MATIC variant. Now, that broadly is equipped with spec that corresponds to the AMG line executive trim level that we briefed you on earlier on, but with the addition of a number of bespoke Mercedes-AMG features which make the car really stand out. There's AMG styling for the front intakes and the rear outtakes. There's a bespoke high-gloss chrome front splitter. There are various extra chrome elements, and there's also an AMG dual-flow exhaust system with chrome tailpipes and an automatically controlled exhaust flap. There's also an AMG-specific radiator grille and wider wheel arches for the bespoke 19-inch AMG 10-spoke wheels. Inside, there's real black leather upholstery. There's also an AMG performance steering wheel, and there is a sportier dynamic select driving mode system. Now, that also has extra slippery and sport plus settings. Ideally, though, you get your GLA 35 4MATIC equipped to at least mid-range premium trim, which gets you a spec that corresponds to the AMG line premium trim level that we briefed you on earlier. So the 2 larger 10.25-inch screens and so on, but with the addition of huge 20-inch AMG wheels and an AMG night styling package, which basically adds high-gloss black to most of the exterior elements to create a meaner sense of pavement presence. Trimming your GLA 35 4MATIC with top Premium Plus spec gets you equipment that corresponds to the AMG line Premium Plus trim level, with the addition of huge 21-inch AMG wheels and a race-style AMG aerodynamic package, which gives the car a huge rear wing and a larger front apron with extra flicks, additions that will cause even informed bystanders to mistake your car for a top-of-the-line GLA 45. There is also a Burmester surround sound audio system. If only that top GLA 45S 4MATIC Plus model will do, then you'll be expecting a lot for the required £60,000 outlay. Apart from the extra power, bespoke 45 series editions include competition-style tuning for the AMG suspension and high-performance braking system. And there's an AMG Dynamic Select driving mode system with an extra race setting, and AMG Dynamic Plus, which includes a drift mode for track days. You will also have the AMG drive unit with driver's package for sharper handling. You'll also have access to the AMG Track Pace app, and that's so you can improve your track technique. And also, you'll be seated on race-style AMG performance seats. Now, other features mirror those of the corresponding GLA 35 4MATIC Premium model. That only leaves the top GLA 45 4MATIC Plus variant. Yes, you heard that right. This Ultimate Plus, that's recognisable to the AMG Cognoscenti by the cross-spoke design of its huge 21-inch AMG wheels, and it benefits from the key addition of adaptive damping too. Inside, the fortunate owner is treated to a more comfortable, electrically adjustable AMG high-end performance front seat with the brand's massaging multi-contour seat package. And he or she is also favoured with the Burmester surround sound audio package too. Other features mirror those of the corresponding GLA 35 4MATIC Premium Plus model. After that marathon spec session, you'll probably be quite pleased to hear that Mercedes isn't really bothered about offering many options across the GLA range. They reason instead that with so many different trim levels, customers are going to merely move up a spec if they want some extra features. Nevertheless, there are a few things that we would like to have seen listed here. Things like a sliding and reclining rear bench, adaptive damping, a head-up display, a 230-volt rear socket, a fold-flat front passenger seat, and also their clever Mercedes energizing package. Now that combines music, lighting and selective seat massaging into various selectable programs. Now all of those features are available on the GLA in other markets, but at the time of this test in late spring 2021, they weren't available here. Most of what you can have is practically orientated. There is a tow bar available, of course, provided you've chosen a trim level inclusive of tow bar pre-installation. And you can add in the roof carrier bars, which you'll need for a roof box, and carriers for skis, snowboards and bikes. You can fit all-season rubber floor mats too. And for the boot, there's a shallow boot tub and also a stowage crate. Mercedes also has a range of bespoke designed child seats. On paint colour choice now, metallic paint is standard on the GLA 250E PHEV variants like this one, but do bear in mind that it costs more on all the conventionally engined models. The only no-cost colour option which is available across the standard range is solid polar white. We've got denim blue metallic here, and if you really want to push the boat out on a GLA 250E, there is the ridiculously expensive but opulently lustrous Mountain Grey Magno finish. On to safety. This car's MFA2 platform was one of the first to be engineered by Mercedes at the brand's Technology Centre for Vehicle Safety in Sindelfingen, which develops vehicle structures based on findings from research into real accidents. Now, every single body shell component of this model was developed according to the loads and the stresses encountered in real-world crashes with respect to material thickness, sheet steel quality and joining technology. And of course, this GLA includes all the usual camera-driven kit too. As standard, you get active brake assist autonomous braking. This is one of those setups that scans the road ahead as you drive and warns you of potential accident hazards, and is also capable of autonomously braking the car if you don't respond to the warnings, or perhaps you aren't able to respond. Now, testing has indicated that this whole setup will eradicate 20% of nose-to-tail accidents and will decrease their severity in a further 25% of cases. Active lane keeping assist, that is also standard across the GLA range, and that's able not only to warn you if you drift across the lane markings, but it's also capable of applying subtle steering lock to ease a car back to where it ought to be. In addition, Mercedes also includes another really important camera safety feature, and that's attention assist. Now, this monitors your driving reactions to detect drowsiness. There's also speed limit assist. Now that detects the speed limits and displays them in the instrument binnacle. Plus the Mercedes Me Connect app that we were talking about earlier on. That also includes an eCall emergency call system, and that will automatically alert the emergency services with your exact GPS location if the airbags are deployed in an accident. More familiar standard safety stuff includes ABS brakes, which automatically prime themselves in wet weather and flash the rear lights in emergency stops to warn following motorists. Plus there's an ESP stability control system with acceleration skid control and curve dynamic assist for extra cornering traction. If all that's not enough to keep you out of the hedge, there are also twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus there's a driver's knee bag. There are anti-whiplash head restraints, ISOFIX child seat fastenings, deformable steering column, crash-responsive emergency lighting and a pedestrian-friendly bonnet. Plus you get a tyre pressure monitoring system, and there's hill start assist to stop you from rolling backwards on uphill junctions. What else? Well, the top spec plus trim models get traffic sign assist, which uses a camera to scan speed limit signs, so navigation data always displays the current limit. And the multi-beam LED headlamp systems you get with those top spec variants includes adaptive high beam assist to automatically dip the headlights for you at night in the face of oncoming traffic. If you want to go further and get some of the choicest elements of Mercedes camera-driven safety tech, you'll need to buy in right at the very top of the range with the priciest plus versions of the various GLA sub-model lines we just mentioned. So AMG line Premium Plus trim for a conventional model, exclusive edition Premium Plus for this plug-in, the Premium Plus version of the GLA 35 and the top Plus version of the AMG 45. For all those models, you'll be offered the chance to spend around £1,500 more to get the brand's driving assistance package, which includes 8 key extra camera safety elements, amongst which are features that gives this car limited autonomous driving capability. So let's talk you through all that. The driving assistance package menu starts with active blind spot assist, which can warn you of vehicles in your blind spot during a lane change and can help to avoid a collision by means of one-sided braking intervention. There is braking stuff too, of course. The active brake assist with cross traffic function feature can help to avoid accidents with vehicles ahead, with crossing traffic and also with pedestrians, and or mitigate their consequences. And there's active emergency stop assist, which initiates immediate emergency braking if evasion is impossible. There is also an evasive steering assist, which can support you in making evasive manoeuvres if a pedestrian or a cyclist suddenly appears in your path. Plus, a clever route-based speed adjustment feature works with GPS data to automatically adapt your speed before curves, roundabouts and junctions. As we mentioned, the driving assistance package also includes limited autonomous driving capability to suit the mood of the moment, and that comes courtesy of the pack's active distance assist Distronic system, and that's designed to operate on a dual carriageway, and it works with the Mercedes active steering assist setup. Now, the Distronic feature is basically a super advanced adaptive cruise control, which automatically regulates your distance to the car in front and can, if necessary, remotely slow the car with up to 50% of stopping power. It also works with the active speed limit assist feature, which automatically sets the cruise control to speed limit signs as you pass them. Finally, active steering assist keeps you in the centre of your designated lane and will, if needed, apply a subtle steering correction to ease you back to where you should be. It's all very, very reassuring. This second generation GLA starts off with a big advantage in life when it comes to efficiency. Its sophisticated aluminium intensive MFA platform, which delivers a class leadingly light 1,480 kilos curb weight. That ought to translate into class leading fuel and CO2 figures, and it probably would if the volume petrol models used an engine a bit more sophisticated than the Renault developed 4-cylinder unit fitted to the GLA 180 and GLA 200 variants. Mercedes points out that this engine incorporates cylinder deactivation, which disables 2 of the 4 cylinders under light to medium throttle loads, but in this day and age it's recognised by other brands that base petrol power plants of that sort should just have 3 cylinders. The engine's fitted to base versions of direct rivals like BMW's X1 and the Audi Q3 do, which is why those models shade the returns of the 2 entry-level GLAs. Let's get to the WLTP rated figures, which see both the GLA 180 and the GLA 200 returning 151 grams per kilometre of CO2 and respective combined cycle fuel figures of 41.8 and 42.8 mpg. Amongst direct rivals, those readings are good enough only to shade the rival Volvo XC40 T3 Auto, and that's only because the Swedish contender is nearly 100 kilos heavier. If you want to do better with a conventional power plant, then this GLA's much improved OM654 2-litre diesel unit beckons. It's capable of up to 53.3 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 140 grams per kilometre of CO2 in 150 HP front-driven form and 49.6 mpg and up to 148 grams per kilometre in 190 HP 4MATIC 4-wheel drive guys. We'll also brief you on the performance figures achieved by the rather more performance-orientated 2-litre petrol GLA models. The 224 HP GLA 250 manages up to 36.7 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 172 grams per kilometre. For the 306 horsepower Mercedes-AMG 35 4MATIC, it's up to 34 mpg and up to 189 grams per kilometre. And for the top wild 421 horsepower Mercedes-AMG 45S 4MATIC Plus, it's up to 29.7 mpg and up to 215 grams per kilometre. For this part of the film, though, we want to particularly focus on the alternative GLA 250e plug-in hybrid petrol model that we've been trying here, since that will be of particular interest to you if you're considering this Mercedes SUV from an efficiency perspective. As mentioned in our driving experience section, this electrified derivative mates a 1.33 litre petrol engine with a gearbox mounted 75 kilowatt electric motor, and that's powered by a 50.6 kilowatt hour battery, and it's able to provide an electric range of 37 miles. Like all PHEVs, GLA 250e can charge its battery on the move. When accelerating or braking, the powertrain's mechanical rotation is converted into recuperated electrical energy, and it's used to charge the high voltage battery. The driver can also have a major influence on the recuperation process when in the provided electric mode by using the provided paddles behind the steering wheel here. The paddle on the left increases the level of recuperation, while the paddle on the right reduces it. With a long pull on either paddle shifter, though, the intelligent mode D-Auto is activated, and it uses a radar sensor and navigation data to automatically adjust the recuperation level to the traffic situation, so you don't have to. At the wheel of a GLA 250e, the main instrument screen always shows a battery charge percentage, but your primary access point for monitoring range, charging and the functionality of the PHEV powertrain is on the EQ menu on the center dash screen. This has 5 sections. The first covers your charging options. Now from here you'll set the departure time, your maximum charge current, plus there's an electric in city option which allows you to save charge for urban driving that you might have to do at the end of a journey. The second EQ section covers energy consumption, with graphs showing fuel consumption and electrical recuperation over 4 recent time periods, the last 7.5, 30 or 90 minutes, or over the last 3 hours. The EQ menu also gives you an energy flow monitor, so you can see in real time how the powertrain's working. And there's a vehicle section which shows you the car's angle, the outside temperature, and the percentage of acceleration or braking that you're currently using. There is also an engine section there which shows output, torque, battery voltage, and charge air pressure. You also might like to keep a close eye on the trip part of the instrument screen menu. Now that has various selectable efficiency options. There's an eco display to help you to drive more economically. There's an EQ power percentage meter. There's a screen that shows your consumption in gallons per hour and also in kilowatts per hour, plus a further one that details your remaining petrol powered and full electric driving range. Let's give you some more details on charging your GLA 250E. Using its built-in 7.4 kilowatt capacity onboard charger, the battery can be replenished via a 7.4 kilowatt wall box with AC current in 1 hour 45 minutes from 10 to 100%. Using DC charging at 24 kilowatts, charging from 10 to 80% takes only around 25 minutes. Charging from a domestic 3-pin socket, though, you'll need about 5.5 hours to completely fill the battery. GLA 250E drivers get access to the Mercedes Me Charge network, and that can be accessed either via the Mercedes Me app or by using the MBUX screen in the vehicle. Mercedes Me Charge provides access to over 300,000 charging points across Europe without the need for multiple accounts and RFID cards, and incorporates multiple charging networks, including Polar, which is the UK's largest. A year's membership of the Ionity Rapid Charging Network comes included in the purchase price. At the time of this test in spring 2021, there were around 400 Ionity quick charge stations along the main traffic arteries in Europe. Keep everything charged up, and Mercedes reckons that 90% of regular commuting journeys in a GLA 250E could be done without using the petrol engine at all. As a result, the quoted WLTP combined cycle fuel reading is rated at 201.8 mpg, and your CO2 emissions will be rated at just 32 grams per kilometre. That'll mean a super low 10% BIK tax rating. By comparison, the GLA 200 diesel and petrol variants have BIK ratings of 31% and 37% respectively. For the GLA 220D 4MATIC diesel, it's 32%. For this PHEV, business customers will get 100% first-year capital allowances, and there'll also be no road fund licence to pay. And it'll qualify for a 100% cleaner vehicle discount within the London congestion charge zone. Add everything up, and you should be looking at overall running costs, which are about a third less than a directly comparable conventional petrol or diesel model. And that means that once you've got past this plug-in model's premium asking price, it's not hard to see its financial attractions. But of course, you might be ready to wean yourself off combustion fuel entirely, in which case you need to talk to your dealer about the all-electric EQA full EV version of this design. This offers a much larger 66.5 kilowatt-hour battery with a consequently much longer 265-mile range. But it also takes much longer to charge, obviously. I think 5 hours and 45 minutes using an 11 kilowatt wall box. Okay, that's enough on the plug-in GLA series models. What else might you need to know from an efficiency point of view about the more conventional variants in the range? Well, as you'd expect, all the engines provided across the range meet the latest RDE2 Euro 60 temp emission standards. And all the figures we quoted earlier are aided by this car's optimised aerodynamics, thanks to extensive panelling of the engine bay and of the underbody too. This model's 0.28 CD drag value is actually pretty good for an SUV of this sort. Plus, of course, there are all the usual elements of energy-saving engineering, things like low rolling resistance tyres, brake energy regeneration, electric power steering, and adjustable radiator shutter, and intelligent management of the engine ancillaries like the alternator, the oil feed and the water pump. As usual, you get an eco stop start function that cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're waiting at the lights or when you're stuck in traffic. And in addition, the auto gearbox features a sailing function which disconnects the engine drive at a cruise for greater efficiency. Even the full LED headlights help. They use about 70% less energy than traditional halogen lamps. To get anywhere near the quoted official fuel figures on a regular basis, you'll need to make sure that you're regularly using your GLA in its Dynamic Select driving mode system's most frugal eco setting. This marginally limits the accelerator pedal curve, and it also slightly restricts the output of the climate control system, also the heated rear window, and if it's fitted, the seat heating too. Plus, it automatically activates the sailing feature for the automatic gearbox that we were just talking about. The central infotainment screen we were referring to earlier on has plenty of efficiency readout options, even for the non-electrified GLA models, including graphs for fuel consumption and another version of the eco display for driving more frugally, and that can show on the instrument binnacle, grading you on acceleration, constant motion and the amount of fuel-free coasting that you've done. An eco display is also provided on the Mercedes Me Connect app. What else? Well, residuals are satisfyingly strong by class standards. Independent experts reckon that after 3 years and 36,000 miles, a typical GLA will still be worth around 50% of its original value. Some class contenders do manage better though. Rival Volvo XC40, the figure is 55%. We'd normally place a caution in quoting Mercedes residuals to the effect that going mad on the options list would put a bit of a dent in the expected depreciation, although in this case there's the caveat that used buyers may actively be seeking models upgraded at least to premium trim status, and that gets you the instrument display and the central media screen in their larger 10.25-inch sizes. And insurance, well, you can insure your car through Mercedes, although most company drivers, of course, will have that element included in their lease cost. If you do pay the insurance on your car yourself, then you might find that premiums are rather on the high side. Even the base GLA 180 is rated up at Group 27 and the GLA 250 is Group 36. As for the diesels, well, the GLA 200D is Group 31 and the groupings for the GLA 220D 4MATIC go right up to Group 37 if you specify AMG line Premium Plus trim. And of course, you'll pay your broker heaps for a high-performance Mercedes AMG model. The 35 and the 45 variants are rated at groups 41 and 44. Most GLA models will cost £140 a year to tax, but plusher GLA 220D 4MATIC variants and all the performance Mercedes AMG models crest the £40,000 price barrier, so that will result in a £310 annual VED surcharge. As you'd expect, across the range, the Mercedes aftercare package is comprehensive with a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty, which matches BMW, but which beats Land Rover and Audi. This is built on by Mercedes Mobilo scheme, which delivers breakdown cover for up to 30 years, as long as you continue to have the car serviced at a Mercedes main dealer. Ah yes, maintenance. Well, as usual with one of the Stuttgart brand's models, there's an Assist Plus dashboard service indicator, which monitors engine use and tells you exactly when a garage visit is due. For reference, servicing is usually required every 15,500 miles or every year, whichever comes first. Fixed price servicing is available across the range, and most buyers opt for the Mercedes Service Care Plan, which could cost as little as about £30 a month based on either a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal with 3 services, or 4 years with 4 services. Whichever package you go for, it'll cover the cost of all recommended service items, such as brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. It's also worth mentioning that the standard Mercedes Me Connect Services package includes remote self-diagnostic capability, and that enables your GLA to monitor wear and tear items and to alert your local dealer to let you know if something needs seeing to. The GLA competes in a very different market today to the one it was launched in back in 2014, and this second generation model offers stiffer opposition to key rivals like the Audi Q3, the BMW X1 and the Volvo XC40. That's primarily because it's improved in the 3 main areas where the old model fell a bit short. That car looked a bit unremarkable, it rode the bumps badly and it was a bit cramped in the back. All those issues have been pretty thoroughly addressed here. Plus, it'll be of considerable importance that this car, and its plusher forms anyway, has been equipped and finished with a silken thoroughness that's typical of the 3-pointed star. That caveat relating to the need for plusher variants is an important one, as before you have to spend quite a lot to get yourself the kind of premium ownership experience that the brochures promise. And unless you do that, you might struggle to justify the considerable extra cost that this car demands over its similarly engineered A-Class hatchback showroom stablemate. Still, if you can hide the not inconsiderable price tag that's likely to be attached to your ideal GLA away and lease payments that are sharpened by excellent residuals, you may not feel this issue to be a game-changing one, which would leave you free to enjoy the segment's most sophisticated cabin and impressive standards of efficiency and high-speed ride. And in summary, well, every compact SUV in this class claims to take the concept of sense and sensibility and add to it something of an adventurous streak. This GLA does that too, but with a bit of extra polish. We can see why you might like it.